I came home to find my HOA president hosting a birthday party in my backyard pool, and when I tried to stop her, she had me arrested. But that's not even the crazy part. The crazy part is what I did next. Let me paint you the scene. I'm pulling into my driveway after a weekend camping trip when I hear diesel generators roaring behind my house. I walk to my gate, and there are 40 complete strangers splashing around in my custom-built $25,000 saltwater pool. There's a bouncy castle, professional catering trucks, and a DJ booth like it's some kind of resort. And there's Delilah, my HOA president, strutting around in designer swimwear, barking orders at staff like she owns the place. The smell of chlorine and diesel fumes hit me as some random kid cannonballs into my pool, and when I try to enter my own backyard, her security hands me a trespassing warning. What would you do if 40 strangers took over your backyard? And where are you watching from? I know you've got HOA nightmares too. Let me back up and tell you how this nightmare started. I'm Marcus, 52, electrician, recently divorced, and the proud owner of my grandmother's 1960s ranch house on Maple Street. After losing half my assets in the divorce, inheriting this place felt like a lifeline. The real prize was the backyard, big enough for the pool my grandmother always dreamed of, but never could afford. So I spent 8 months and $25,000 of my settlement money building her that dream while learning something crucial. When you do electrical work yourself, you document everything because building permits protect you from future legal challenges. Every wire, every pipe, every permit properly filed and stored in a fireproof safe. For 2 peaceful years, life was good. The neighborhood was this perfect mix of original owners, like Mrs. Olivia, who'd lived here since the 70s, and newer families who actually appreciated the community. Everyone minded their business, helped during storms, classic American suburb harmony. Then the California tech executives arrived like a plague of Range Rovers and renovation permits, bringing with them the human embodiment of suburban tyranny, Delilah Morrison. Picture this. A 45-year-old former real estate agent who moved here from San Diego and immediately decided everyone else was living wrong. She drove a pristine white BMW that somehow never collected dust, probably detailed weekly at taxpayer expense, and lived in an $800,000 McMansion that looked like a furniture catalog exploded. Her husband traveled constantly for some pharmaceutical company, leaving Delilah with unlimited time and an insatiable need to control other people's lives. The woman possessed the supernatural ability to find violations in a blade of grass growing too tall, and trust me, after 20 years as an electrician dealing with overcomplicated inspectors, I thought I'd seen peak pettiness. The HOA dues jumped from $0 to $400 monthly overnight. Suddenly my work truck was a commercial vehicle violation, despite being legally parked in my own driveway. My front yard vegetable garden became non-compliant landscaping that allegedly lowered property values. But Delilah's masterpiece was discovering I'd built my pool without HOA architectural approval, a retroactive rule invented 6 months after my construction finished. $5,000 fine plus weekly inspections to ensure community standards compliance. When I calmly explained that my property deed predated their HOA by 40 years, making their rules legally unenforceable on pre-existing structures, she smiled, that special smile reserved for people who mistake legal knowledge for arrogance. The harassment campaign began immediately. Anonymous complaints about electrical safety concerns flooded the city inspector's office. Ironic, considering my installation exceeded code requirements by margins that made the actual inspector whistle with appreciation. During my daughter Emma's 13th birthday party, Delilah appeared at 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon with measuring tape and camera, citing noise ordinances while children splashed happily in the pool. The crunch of gravel under her BMW tires became my personal anxiety soundtrack as she documented imaginary violations with the dedication of a forensic photographer. Every family barbecue brought a visit from this woman who'd apparently appointed herself the neighborhood's unofficial lifestyle auditor. 2 years of escalating warfare led to this summer's nuclear option. Emma, now 16, was spending July with me, the first bright spot since the divorce. I planned an epic pool party for her birthday, invited all her school friends, prepared to show my daughter that her dad could still create joy despite everything falling apart. That's when Delilah filed her injunction claiming pool parties violated peaceful enjoyment clauses, scheduled for Monday morning court. Perfect timing, since Emma and I had planned a father-daughter camping trip that weekend, our first real bonding time in months. Sunday evening, I'm packing up our campsite when my phone rings. Bob's voice carries that particular urgency reserved for true emergencies. "Marcus, you need to get home right now. There are 40 people in your backyard, and Delilah's charging admission." The taste of bile replaced the lingering flavor of s'mores as I realized this woman had just declared war on the wrong electrician. Time to put my professional skills to creative use. The drive home felt like the longest 20 minutes of my life. Every red light gave me more time to imagine what I'd find, and somehow reality was worse. I pulled into my driveway to see a bouncy castle inflated in my front yard with a professional banner reading "Madison's Sweet 16 Pool Party Extravaganza." The smell of diesel generators mixed with catered barbecue hit me as two teenagers in black security t-shirts blocked my own gate like bouncers at a nightclub. "Sorry, sir. Private event," the taller kid mumbled, probably 17 and clearly uncomfortable. Behind him, my custom saltwater pool sparkled with rainbow LED lights as 40-plus strangers splashed around like they owned the place. Delilah strutted across my deck in a designer swimsuit that probably cost more than my truck payment, directing photographers and catering staff like she was producing a Hollywood premiere. "This is my house," I said, showing my license to the kid who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "That's my pool, my backyard, my electrical system." The kid fumbled for his phone while his buddy, Delilah's nephew, smirked and crossed his arms. The little punk was enjoying this power trip way too much. That's when Delilah appeared, phone recording. "Marcus, you're trespassing on authorized event property. I have legal permits and documentation of your aggressive behavior for Monday's hearing." She waved official-looking papers with the confidence of someone who'd planned this moment for weeks. The metallic taste of pure rage filled my mouth as I realized she'd orchestrated this entire circus knowing I'd be camping. She produced what looked like a rental agreement with my signature, claiming I'd leased her the pool for the month. Decent forgery work, but I knew my own handwriting. "See? Legal authorization from the property owner." The woman had actually counterfeited a lease to justify stealing my pool. I started recording everything, and that's when my electrician training kicked in. The city permits posted on my fence showed something beautiful. Delilah had filed Friday afternoon for a Saturday party, but learned from my divorce attorney that events over 25 people require 48 hours advance notice. She'd violated her own permit timeline. Even better, her insurance listed her home address while the actual event was at mine, meaning zero coverage for accidents or damage. I called the permits office, leaving an official complaint. Unpermitted event at 847 Maple Street without property owner consent with forged authorization documents. While talking, I counted heads. 47 people in a pool rated for 25 maximum, no lifeguard, children unsupervised. The catering operation lacked food service permits for this address. The sound system exceeded residential limits. Her security team was being paid, turning this from private party to unlicensed commercial event. But here's where it got interesting. I noticed they'd illegally tapped my pool's electrical system to power their DJ equipment. Not just trespassing, but theft of utilities and a fire hazard that could fry someone. 20 years as an electrician taught me that unauthorized electrical connections violate both city code and insurance policies. If someone got electrocuted, Delilah would face criminal charges. The look on her face when she realized I was gathering evidence instead of exploding was priceless. She'd expected me to lose my temper, give her restraining order ammunition. Instead, I was building a case that would demolish her scheme. The crunch of gravel announced another arrival. A city inspector responding to Mrs. Olivia's noise complaint. Bless that woman's heart. "Are you the homeowner?" the inspector asked me directly. I smiled. "Absolutely." The panic that flashed across Delilah's face was pure gold. She'd just admitted on camera to organizing an unpermitted commercial event on someone else's property using forged documents. The inspector examined Delilah's permits while I showed him my property deed and the forged rental agreement. "Ma'am, event permits require property owner verification. This signature doesn't match the deed holder's name and your insurance covers a different address." His radio crackled as he called for backup. "We've got permit violations and possible fraud at 847 Maple Street." Delilah tried damage control. "This is a misunderstanding. Marcus agreed to this months ago." But the inspector was already photographing the illegal electrical connections and overcrowding violations. Her nephew whispered urgently in her ear, probably reminding her that impersonating authority figures is a felony. The beautiful irony hit me as parents started arriving to pick up their kids. These families had paid Delilah for exclusive pool party access at what they thought was a legitimate venue. Now they're discovering their hostess is a fraud who'd stolen someone's backyard for profit. The smell of fear sweat replaced her expensive perfume as reality crashed down. "Sir, we're going to need everyone out of the pool," the inspector announced. "This event is shut down pending investigation." Delilah's Sweet 16 extravaganza collapsed faster than a house of cards in a hurricane, but I had a feeling this was just the opening act of her revenge tour. Monday morning brought fresh hell courtesy of Delilah's legal creativity. I was sipping coffee and documenting weekend evidence when her BMW crunched into my driveway at exactly 8 a.m. She emerged carrying a leather briefcase like she was closing a corporate merger, wearing a power suit that screamed, "I have expensive lawyers," followed by a man whose tie probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Marcus, we need to discuss your breach of our rental agreement," she announced with the confidence of someone who'd apparently spent Sunday night in a document forgery marathon. The audacity was breathtaking. After getting caught red-handed with fake papers, she was doubling down with an entire briefcase of fabricated evidence. Her companion introduced himself as her attorney, though the family resemblance suggested he was more brother-in-law than legal eagle. The new documents were criminally impressive. A detailed pool rental agreement backdated to 2 weeks before my camping trip, complete with fake email chains, fabricated payment records, and a bogus insurance policy that somehow made my pool her responsibility. She'd even created maintenance agreements with my forged signature scattered throughout like confetti at a fraud convention. "You signed this lease on June 15th, Marcus. Our attorney has verified everything," she said, gesturing to her relative who nodded gravely while trying to look intimidating rather than incompetent. But desperation makes people sloppy, and the forged signature was completely different from Saturday's version. She'd tried to improve it, but made it obviously fake to anyone with functioning eyeballs. My buddy Jake arrived for our morning coffee routine, glanced at the documents, and burst out laughing. "Delilah, that's not even in the same galaxy as Marcus's handwriting. I've seen his electrical invoices for 20 years. The smell of her expensive perfume couldn't mask the stench of her panic, as her carefully constructed lie crumbled under basic scrutiny. While she threatened lawsuits with the fury of someone whose master plan was unraveling, I was quietly building a federal case that would make prosecutors weep with joy. During my divorce, I learned that property fraud follows predictable patterns, and desperate people rarely stop at one victim. My Sunday evening neighborhood conversations revealed Delilah's crime spree was more extensive than a pharmaceutical sales convention, which, considering her husband's profession, seemed oddly appropriate. Mrs. Rodriguez had paid $1,500 for emergency landscape violation correction, where Delilah's crew removed healthy plants and replaced them with invasive species that killed everything else. Mrs. Olivia revealed an $800 consultation fee for garden advice that never materialized. Mr. Peterson showed me forged HOA meeting minutes justifying fines that violated our original neighborhood covenants. This woman was running a neighborhood-wide extortion racket with the efficiency of organized crime and the subtlety of a circus parade. Jake's Uncle Tony, a retired municipal attorney who'd taught me during my divorce that property law protects homeowners from exactly this kind of predatory behavior, examined my pool damage from the weekend with the thoroughness of a crime scene investigator. The pH levels were completely destroyed, requiring $1,200 in chemical rebalancing. Pool heater filter clogged with sunscreen residue and party debris. My custom LED system short-circuited by amateur attempts to add disco lighting for their photography session. "This isn't wear and tear," Tony explained while documenting everything with professional photographs. "This is negligent destruction that creates massive liability for whoever authorized unauthorized use." Tuesday brought Delilah's nuclear option, a restraining order claiming I'd threatened violence and used my electrical expertise to sabotage her home's power systems. She'd submitted Ring doorbell footage edited like a horror movie trailer, making our normal property line conversations look like death threats delivered by a dangerous sociopath. The order prohibited me from using my own backyard for 30 days, effectively turning my pool into her personal rental business while I watched helplessly from my kitchen window. The smell of fresh mulch and expensive landscaping wafted through my windows as she installed professional event infrastructure on my property with the efficiency of a military operation. Professional lighting rigs, sound equipment, catering prep stations. She was creating a permanent outdoor venue using my backyard as her business location. But what she didn't realize was that restraining orders create public records, and her sworn statements about my dangerous electrical knowledge would become evidence of her own crimes when investigators discovered she'd been stealing electricity from community systems to power her elaborate lighting displays. Sarah, Jake's wife who works at city planning, dropped the real bombshell over lunch with the casual tone of someone discussing weekend plans. Delilah's HOA presidency was as fraudulent as her rental agreements, won in an election where only 12% of homeowners voted during a Tuesday afternoon meeting announced with 2 hours' notice. The voting location changed last minute from the community center to her living room, and several proxy votes were filed for traveling homeowners who denied giving permission when I quietly contacted them. The taste of victory was already sweet as I realized Delilah's own aggressive tactics were creating the evidence needed to destroy her completely. Every forged document was another felony charge waiting to happen. Every false police report was criminal conspiracy documented in official records. By Wednesday, I had enough evidence to end her schemes permanently, but something told me this woman had one more desperate play planned before I drained her entire operation. Wednesday morning, I woke up to the sound of construction equipment in my own backyard. The restraining order had turned my property into Delilah's personal kingdom, and she was making the most of her 30-day window with the efficiency of a military occupation. Through my kitchen window, I watched professional event planners installing a stage where my vegetable garden used to be, complete with catering stations and parking coordination signs that transformed my quiet corner lot into what looked like a country club. The crunch of gravel under delivery trucks became my new alarm clock, as she prepared for what her glossy flyers called the Community Appreciation Gala, an exclusive neighborhood showcase experience. The audacity was breathtaking. Tickets selling for $150 per person, featuring local politicians and media personalities in what she described as a celebration of visionary community leadership. She'd monetized my backyard while I was legally prohibited from setting foot on it, turning my custom pool into her personal ATM. The smell of fresh paint and landscaping mulch drifted through my windows as she created her theft masterpiece, complete with professional photography setups and a red carpet entrance through my own front gate. Emma provided the intelligence breakthrough that changed everything. During her sleepover at Madison's house, teenagers are invisible to adults plotting crimes. She overheard family dinner conversations that would make federal prosecutors salivate. Delilah's husband was returning from his longest business trip yet, bringing pharmaceutical company executives very interested in neighborhood investment opportunities. But here's the kicker Madison accidentally revealed. Her parents had been arguing about money problems, and this gala absolutely had to succeed because they were running out of time to fix everything. That's when the pieces clicked together like a perfectly wired electrical circuit. This wasn't random harassment or petty revenge. Delilah was using my stolen property as a showcase for investors in a massive redevelopment scheme. Sarah's city planning connections confirmed my suspicions when she discreetly showed me development proposals over coffee. Luxury townhomes replacing every single-family home on our street, with my corner lot designated as the sales office and project entrance. She needed to demonstrate control over my property to prove she could deliver the entire neighborhood to developers. The brilliant irony hit me as I remembered installing my pool's smart controls. Every function was programmable through my smartphone: heating, lighting, filtration, chemical dispensing, and most importantly, drainage. She'd stolen my pool without realizing I could shut down the entire system remotely at the precise moment for maximum humiliation. 20 years of electrical work had taught me that the best revenge is perfectly timed, and this woman had just given me the ultimate opportunity. By Thursday, her preparations reached fever pitch. Professional caterers installed commercial kitchen equipment in my backyard while she directed operations like Steven Spielberg filming an Oscar winner. The guest list posted on neighborhood social media made my blood boil and my electrician's brain start calculating. Mayor, city council members, local news personalities, all invited to witness her transformation project and hear expansion plans for other underutilized private spaces. She was literally using my stolen property to pitch stealing everyone else's property to government officials. Friday morning brought her masterstroke of arrogance. Delilah appeared on the local morning show, sitting beside my custom LED lighting system while explaining how strong leadership overcomes resistance to positive change. She described me as a difficult neighbor who couldn't appreciate community progress and announced plans to expand the program neighborhood-wide. The woman was on live television claiming credit for my craftsmanship while planning to destroy my neighborhood. But while she was performing for cameras, I was gathering the final pieces of evidence that would end her empire. My investigation into her finances revealed the desperation driving this insane timeline. Her property was facing foreclosure within 90 days, and her husband's pharmaceutical company was under federal investigation for price fixing. The gala proceeds weren't just theft. They were her last desperate attempt to avoid financial ruin before the sheriff's sale. The beautiful trap was setting itself as families throughout our community bought tickets for what they thought was a legitimate celebration. These neighbors were paying premium prices for access to stolen property, completely unaware their hostess was running a real estate scam that would destroy their homes. The smell of expensive catering mixed with diesel fumes from generators illegally powered by my electrical system, creating the perfect metaphor for her entire operation. Saturday evening approached like Christmas morning for someone who'd been very, very good all year. Professional lighting illuminated my pool area while sound equipment tested audio levels for speeches that would never happen. Her elaborate preparations had created the perfect audience for the justice she was about to receive. The only question was whether she'd realize what was happening when my pool started draining during her moment of triumph, or if her arrogance would blind her until the very last drop disappeared from her stolen kingdom. The taste of anticipation was sweeter than my grandmother's apple pie as I prepared to give Delilah the surprise of her lifetime. Saturday afternoon, while Delilah was getting her hair done for the evening's grand performance, Sarah appeared at my door with a manila folder and the expression of someone carrying state secrets. "Marcus, we need to talk before tonight," she said, glancing around like federal agents might be watching. The urgency in her voice made my coffee taste like battery acid as we spread documents across my kitchen table. The first bombshell hit like a meteor strike. Delilah's McMansion was 90 days from foreclosure, with $47,000 in overdue taxes and mounting legal bills, but that was just the appetizer. Her husband's pharmaceutical company was facing federal investigation for price-fixing schemes that could result in $50 million in fines and criminal charges. The family had been desperately transferring assets through shell companies, but they'd run out of both time and money to avoid complete financial ruin. "But here's what changes everything," Sarah whispered, producing a document that made my heart stop. My grandmother's original 1962 property deed contained a clause I'd never noticed: right of first refusal for any neighborhood development projects. Every threat Delilah had made about redevelopment was legally meaningless without my written consent. The woman had been waging war against someone who held veto power over her entire scheme. Jake examined the deed with the reverence of someone handling the Constitution. This means her HOA authority was pure fiction. She had no legal power over your property from day one. The irony was delicious. My grandmother had unknowingly given me the legal nuclear weapon to destroy Delilah's operation, and I'd been sitting on it for 3 years while she terrorized the neighborhood. But Sarah's investigation had uncovered something far worse than individual harassment. Delilah had been systematically looting HOA funds to cover personal expenses, using accounting tricks that would make organized crime proud. The landscaping companies owed $15,000. Contractors waiting for $23,000 in payments. Even the community pool maintenance service, ironic considering her theft of mine, was owed $8,000 for work already completed. The pharmaceutical connection explained her insane timeline and desperate tactics. Tonight's gala wasn't just about humiliating me or showcasing stolen property. It was Delilah's last chance to sell neighborhood properties to cover her husband's legal liabilities before federal agents seized their assets. The guest list included potential investors for houses that weren't even for sale. With my corner lot as the crown jewel of a development project she had zero authority to create. "She's been running a classic Ponzi scheme," Tony explained when we called him with the financial evidence. "During my divorce, he'd taught me how predatory schemes always collapse when new money stops flowing, and Delilah's operation was textbook fraud. She collected money from homeowners for fake violations, used it to pay previous debts, then manufactured new violations to generate more cash. The pyramid was collapsing, and tonight's gala was her desperate attempt to cash out before everything imploded." The moral weight hit me as I realized the full scope of her victims. Mrs. Olivia had taken out a loan to pay Delilah's fraudulent fines. Mr. Peterson had delayed medical treatment to afford manufactured violations. These elderly neighbors deserved justice, not collateral damage from my personal revenge fantasy. The pool drainage wasn't just symbolic anymore. It was the opening move in a legal strategy that would protect everyone she'd victimized. But what sealed her fate was the realization that gala success would fund her escape while leaving our community financially devastated. She'd stolen from vulnerable neighbors to finance a real estate scam that would destroy their homes. The woman wasn't just a petty tyrant anymore. She was a predator who'd turned community service into organized crime. The smell of diesel generators firing up in my backyard announced the beginning of her final performance. Time to show this pharmaceutical fraud that some electricians know more about power than she ever imagined. Tonight, justice would be served ice cold with a side of perfectly timed drainage. Saturday evening, with Delilah's gala just 3 hours away, Jake's garage transformed into mission control for the most satisfying revenge plot in suburban history. The smell of motor oil and determination filled the air as our unlikely team gathered around his workbench. Jake cracking his knuckles like a safecracker, Sarah clutching evidence files like state secrets, Tony reviewing legal strategy with the intensity of someone planning D-Day, Mrs. Olivia armed with binoculars and righteous fury, and Bob contributing military precision that made our amateur operation look almost professional. Emma burst through the door, practically vibrating with teenage spy energy. "Madison's having a complete meltdown," she announced breathlessly. Her parents have been screaming about money all afternoon, and Delilah keeps checking her phone like she's expecting bad news. Something's got them terrified. The taste of impending victory was already sweet as we realized Delilah's confidence was cracking before we'd even started. Our strategy was beautifully simple. Let Delilah hang herself with her own rope while we documented every criminal act for posterity. The pool drainage would happen at exactly 7:23 p.m. during her poolside cocktail presentation, when she'd have maximum witnesses to her humiliation. But that was just the opening act. The real show would be watching her elaborate fraud scheme collapse in real time while cameras rolled. Jake and I had spent the afternoon perfecting the technical masterpiece that would be Delilah's downfall. My pool's smart controls could empty 15,000 gallons in 23 minutes, creating a dramatic spiral effect that would leave her paying guests standing in an empty concrete bowl while she tried to explain why her exclusive venue had suddenly become a drainage demonstration. During my divorce, I'd learned that the best revenge is perfectly legal and precisely timed, and this woman was about to get a masterclass in both. The backup systems were pure electrical engineer poetry. Hidden manual controls behind my panel, emergency override switches Jake could access from his truck, and smartphone apps that let me monitor every gallon from anywhere in the neighborhood. 20 years of electrical work taught me to always have redundancy, I explained to Tony, who was documenting our methods for legal purposes. When you're dealing with power, you never rely on just one system. Tony's legal strategy was equally elegant in its simplicity. The moment Delilah claimed ownership or authority over my property in front of witnesses, she'd be confessing to fraud, trespassing, and theft on camera. Her own gala guests would become prosecution witnesses, and the media coverage would ensure community-wide awareness of her schemes. "The beautiful thing about criminals," he said with the satisfaction of someone who'd sent dozens to prison, "is they always want to brag about their crimes to an audience." Sarah had positioned her journalist contacts like chess pieces across the event. Local TV news would cover the community celebration angle while investigative reporters documented the property theft revelation. Social media streaming would ensure viral coverage regardless of traditional media cooperation. The city inspector attending as a concerned neighbor would provide official documentation of code violations and illegal electrical theft in real time. But the community protection angle was what transformed this from petty revenge into neighborhood justice. Mrs. Olivia would photograph everything from her kitchen window command post, creating evidence for the dozens of neighbors Delilah had financially victimized. Bob coordinated with other affected homeowners who'd quietly gathered documentation of fraudulent fees and forged violations. This wasn't just about my pool anymore. It was about dismantling a predatory scheme that had terrorized vulnerable elderly residents for years. Emma's intelligence reports painted a picture of a woman on the edge of complete psychological collapse. "Madison's mom made her promise to keep people away from the pool controls," she whispered conspiratorially. "And she keeps talking about how everything depends on tonight going perfectly. Her dad's been on conference calls with lawyers, and Madison heard him say something about asset protection and federal investigators." The pharmaceutical fraud investigation was clearly accelerating faster than Delilah could steal money to cover her legal bills. Our contingency planning covered every scenario from Delilah discovering our plot to her attempting to have me arrested during the drainage. legal documentation ready for immediate filing, media contacts positioned for optimal coverage, community members prepared to testify about systematic exploitation, emergency communication systems established for coordinating response to whatever desperate measures she might attempt. The moral framework kept us focused on justice rather than simple vengeance. Mrs. Rodriguez would finally get her $1,500 back from fraudulent landscaping fees. Mr. Peterson could afford his delayed medical treatment once Delilah's theft was exposed. Mrs. Olivia wouldn't have to pay another penny in manufactured violations designed to fund a pharmaceutical executive's legal defense. As the sun set and expensive cars began arriving for Delilah's gala, the smell of catered food mixed with diesel generator fumes created the perfect metaphor for her entire operation. Expensive facade powered by stolen resources. The taste of anticipation was electric as 7:23 p.m. approached. Time to show this woman that some electricians know exactly how to pull the plug on someone's entire life. The morning after our garage planning session, I woke up to find my electrical meter had been tampered with overnight. Someone had attempted to cut power to my house, specifically to the pool controls, with the finesse of a drunk electrician using a butter knife. The smell of burnt copper wiring mixed with morning coffee created the perfect aroma for realizing Delilah had discovered our Saturday night strategy session through Madison's teenage inability to keep secrets. Her BMW appeared in my driveway at exactly 8 a.m. like a pharmaceutical sales rep making a house call, except this time she brought backup. Two guys in cheap suits emerged from a van labeled Morrison Security Consulting, which sounded about as legitimate as her rental agreements. The taller one wore an earpiece that wasn't connected to anything, while his partner kept adjusting sunglasses that screamed, "I bought these at a gas station." Watching them try to look intimidating was like watching a community theater production of The Sopranos. "Marcus, we need to discuss your conspiracy to disrupt tonight's community celebration," Delilah announced with the manic energy of someone who'd clearly been up all night snorting anxiety and grinding her teeth. She carried a folder thick enough to contain federal indictments, though, knowing her creative relationship with documentation, it probably contained more forged evidence of my imaginary crimes. But here's where it got interesting. While her rent-a-cops fumbled around my pool equipment like toddlers trying to defuse a bomb, Delilah pulled out a manila envelope stuffed with cash. $10,000, supposedly from a community improvement fund, in exchange for written permission to continue using my pool for positive neighborhood activities. The woman was literally trying to buy her way out of tonight's reckoning with what was probably stolen HOA money. Think of Emma's future, Marcus. College funds, her wedding someday. This could solve all your financial problems. The taste of bile rose in my throat as she tried to bribe me with money stolen from my own neighbors while threatening my relationship with my daughter in the same breath. My counterpunch discovery. That's when her desperation revealed the beautiful truth about her situation. While she was focused on my pool controls, I was quietly documenting something far more damaging, her illegal electrical theft throughout the entire neighborhood. Using my legitimate electrician access, I'd discovered she'd been stealing power from community systems for months to run her elaborate outdoor lighting displays. Every illegal connection was photographed, GPS tagged, and ready for utility fraud prosecution. But the real revelation came when her fake security team's radio chatter revealed they weren't just here to sabotage my pool, they were conducting asset recovery throughout the neighborhood. Delilah was systematically stealing anything valuable that wasn't nailed down, preparing for what sounded like an immediate departure after tonight's gala. The psychological warfare escalated throughout the day as she targeted everyone in my support network with surgical precision. Mrs. Olivia received a visit from Adult Protective Services, investigating anonymous reports of elder abuse. Jake got a threatening call about his electrical license being reviewed for professional misconduct. Sarah faced complaints about misusing City Hall resources for personal vendettas. Her social media blitz was equally desperate and revealing. Fake testimonials from concerned neighbors about my dangerous behavior flooded neighborhood platforms. She'd edited Ring doorbell footage to make normal conversations look like death threats, complete with dramatic music that made our property line discussions sound like a horror movie trailer. But Delilah's nuclear option was contacting Emma's school with fabricated concerns about my creating an unsafe environment that warranted child services investigation. That crossed the line from neighborhood harassment into personal warfare. Nobody threatens my relationship with my daughter and walks away unscathed, especially not a pharmaceutical fraud running a real estate scam while her husband faces federal prison time. The beautiful irony emerged as her desperation created exactly the evidence needed to destroy her completely. Every harassment attempt was documented by surveillance systems she didn't know existed. Every threat against my allies created additional witnesses for prosecution. Her attempts to sabotage my property while bribing me with stolen money were captured on camera, with audio clear enough for court presentation. Madison's accidental intelligence drop during Emma's afternoon visit revealed the scope of Delilah's panic. Her parents had been practicing emergency travel procedures and had plane tickets ready for a family vacation immediately after tonight's gala. This wasn't just about neighborhood control anymore. It was about stealing enough money to fund their escape before federal investigators could seize their assets. The woman had transformed from petty HOA tyrant into international fugitive planning in a single week, and tonight's gala was her final heist before disappearing with whatever cash she could steal from my pool rental scam and neighborhood fraud operation. As evening approached and caterers began final preparations in my backyard, the smell of expensive food mixed with diesel generators created the perfect metaphor for her entire operation. Elaborate facade powered by stolen resources. The taste of anticipation was electric as 7:23 p.m. approached. Time to show this pharmaceutical fraud that some electricians know exactly when to flip the switch on someone's entire life. Saturday evening arrived with the dramatic tension of a federal raid, except instead of FBI agents, we had catering trucks and a woman desperate enough to commit multiple felonies in front of 50 witnesses. By 6 p.m., my backyard had transformed into what looked like a movie premiere, complete with red carpet entrance, professional photography stations, and enough stolen electricity to power a small casino. The smell of expensive appetizers mixed with diesel generator fumes as Delilah orchestrated her final performance with the manic energy of someone whose plane tickets were already purchased. Her arrival at 6:30 was pure theater, emerging from a rented Bentley wearing a designer gown that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, clearly purchased with money stolen from neighborhood victims. She posed for photographers beside my custom LED lighting system while claiming credit for the community transformation vision to anyone with a camera. The audacity was breathtaking as she literally stood on my property discussing plans to expand her facilities management program to other underutilized private spaces throughout the neighborhood. But here's where her desperation turned truly criminal. Emma's final intelligence report revealed Delilah had filed an emergency police complaint claiming I'd made death threats and was planning to sabotage community property during the celebration. She'd arranged for patrol cars to be positioned around the event under the pretense of ensuring public safety, but really to arrest me the moment I appeared on my own property. The woman was planning to have me dragged away in handcuffs on live television during my pool drainage for maximum humiliation. The fake evidence she'd prepared was Hollywood-quality production. Doctored audio recordings of our property line conversations, digitally altered to sound like death threats. Staged photographs showing vandalism damage to her property that had clearly been self-inflicted. Written testimony from concerned neighbors who'd apparently witnessed my increasingly violent behavior, neighbors who later denied ever speaking to her when I quietly checked. My final counter-preparation. While she was positioning police as her personal security force, I was completing the most beautiful trap in suburban revenge history. Every illegal electrical connection she'd made throughout the neighborhood was documented and ready for immediate filing with utility fraud investigators. Her systematic theft of HOA funds was organized into prosecution-ready evidence packages. Most importantly, her own surveillance cameras had captured her admitting to criminal conspiracy while standing on my stolen property. The technical masterpiece was ready for deployment. Pool drainage programmed for exactly 7:23 p.m. during her planned poolside cocktail presentation, when she'd have maximum witnesses to watch her elaborate venue disappear in 23 minutes of perfectly timed humiliation. Jake's backup manual controls were tested and ready. My smartphone apps confirmed remote access to every pool function, including the dramatic LED light show that would illuminate her empty concrete embarrassment. But the real genius was Emma's final mission as teenage double agent. Madison had accidentally revealed that her mother was most terrified of equipment malfunction during the event, which meant Delilah suspected something but didn't know what. Emma's job was to keep Madison focused on normal teenage drama while her mother's criminal empire collapsed around them. The guest arrivals created a perfect storm of witnesses, mayor arriving in the city's official vehicle, city council members treating this as a legitimate community event, local news crews covering what they thought was an inspiring neighborhood improvement story, pharmaceutical executives who'd flown in specifically to discuss investment opportunities in properties Delilah had no legal authority to sell. Her performance during cocktail hour was peak desperation disguised as confidence. Standing beside my stolen pool in her designer gown, explaining to potential investors how strategic property acquisition could transform the entire neighborhood into luxury development. She was literally conducting real estate fraud while police officers she'd manipulated provided security for her crimes. The psychological preparation had shifted from personal revenge to community protection as the scope of her victim list became clear. Mrs. Rodriguez would finally recover her $1,500 from fraudulent landscaping fees. Mr. Peterson could afford his delayed medical treatment once her theft operation was exposed. Mrs. Olivia wouldn't have to make another loan payment for manufactured violations. These people deserved justice, and tonight would deliver it with the precision of a perfectly timed electrical circuit. The beautiful irony hit me as I watched from my kitchen window. She'd stolen my pool to showcase a development project that required my legal consent, using money stolen from neighbors who were attending as paying guests, while police she'd deceived with false reports provided security for her final heist before fleeing the country. The woman had created a criminal conspiracy so elaborate it would take federal prosecutors months to untangle all the charges. As 7:23 p.m. approached, the taste of justice was sweeter than my grandmother's secret recipe apple pie. The sound of expensive heels clicking on my pool deck mixed with laughter from people who had no idea they were about to witness the most satisfying example of poetic justice in HOA history. Time to give Delilah the surprise finale she'd never forget, assuming she wasn't already in federal custody by morning. At exactly 7:20 p.m., Delilah positioned herself beside my pool like a conductor preparing for a symphony, champagne glass raised toward 50 guests who had no idea they were about to witness the most epic collapse in suburban history. The professional lighting illuminated her designer gown as she began her toast about community transformation through visionary leadership, while I sat in Jake's truck across the street with my smartphone ready to deliver the surprise of her lifetime. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to what I believe represents the future of neighborhood development, she announced to the crowd of politicians, pharmaceutical executives, and unsuspecting neighbors who'd paid premium prices for this exclusive experience. The irony was delicious. She was literally standing over my custom LED lighting system while claiming credit for transforming the community through strategic property partnerships and innovative resource management. The police officers she'd positioned as security looked bored but official, completely unaware they'd been manipulated into providing protection for an elaborate fraud scheme. Detective Morrison, no relation despite the name, was taking photos for what he thought was community relations documentation. The mayor nodded approvingly at Delilah's description of public-private cooperation that benefits everyone involved. These people had no idea they were about to become witnesses in a federal criminal case. At 7:22 p.m., Delilah raised her glass higher and began the line that would haunt her for years. This beautiful pool facility represents what's possible when neighbors work together to... That's when I pressed the drainage activation button and watched 23 minutes of perfect revenge begin. The water level dropped visibly within 30 seconds, creating a gentle whirlpool effect around the confused guests who were still holding cocktails and wondering why their hostess had suddenly stopped talking mid-sentence. The custom LED lights continued operating perfectly, creating an ethereal rainbow effect in the draining water that was actually quite beautiful if you weren't the person committing fraud beside it. Ladies and gentlemen, we seem to be experiencing minor technical difficulties, Delilah announced with the kind of forced calm that screams internal panic. She frantically gestured to her security team, who immediately started looking for electrical controls they'd failed to sabotage that morning. The smell of fear sweat replaced her expensive perfume as reality began dawning that someone else controlled her stolen venue. The visual spectacle was everything I'd dreamed of, and more. Water swirling down the drain in perfect spirals while expensive party furniture suddenly sat in shallow puddles. Guests stepping back in designer shoes as their exclusive pool experience literally disappeared beneath their feet. Professional photographers capturing every moment for what they thought was documentation of a community celebration, but was actually evidence collection for prosecution. By 7:25 p.m., the water level had dropped enough that Delilah's poolside platform was no longer poolside. It was concrete side, and her elaborate staging looked ridiculous next to an increasingly empty hole. That's when I made my entrance, walking calmly across the street to my own property with a folder of legal documents and the confidence of someone who'd just activated the most satisfying revenge in neighborhood history. "Excuse me, officers," I said, approaching the police with my driver's license and property deed. "I'm Marcus Olivia, and this is my house, my pool, and my electrical system that's currently draining water from my own property." The look of confusion on Detective Morrison's face was priceless as he realized his community event security detail had become a crime scene investigation. Delilah's desperation reached peak comedy as she tried to maintain control of a situation that was literally flowing down the drain. "This is Marcus, the neighbor I filed complaints about. He's obviously sabotaging community property out of spite." But her protests sounded increasingly hollow as I presented my deed documentation to police while her stolen pool continued its dramatic emptying sequence. "Ma'am, this gentleman owns the property," Detective Morrison said after examining my paperwork. "Did you have written permission to host this event here?" The silence from Delilah was deafening as 50 witnesses realized they'd been paying premium prices for access to stolen property by someone who'd just been caught red-handed. The mic drop moment came when I addressed the crowd directly. "This is my pool, on my property, built with my own hands using my grandmother's inheritance money. I'll drain it whenever I choose, and I choose to drain it now because this woman has been stealing from your neighbors for months while planning to sell your homes to developers without your consent." The media frenzy was instant and beautiful. Tom's journalist contacts switched from lifestyle coverage to investigative reporting as they realized they were witnessing the collapse of a criminal conspiracy. Social media exploded with live streams as guests pulled out phones to document Delilah's meltdown. The hashtag #AtPoolJustice started trending before the water finished draining. By 7:43 p.m., my pool was completely empty. Delilah was in handcuffs for filing false police reports and fraud, and 50 former supporters were demanding refunds while learning about property rights and HOA abuse prevention. The taste of justice was sweeter than anything Delilah's stolen catering could have provided. The immediate aftermath was more satisfying than any revenge fantasy I could have imagined. Detective Morrison arrested Delilah on charges that kept multiplying as the investigation expanded: fraud, forgery, filing false police reports, theft of utilities, and conspiracy to defraud homeowners. Her husband's pharmaceutical company raids the following week resulted in asset seizures that included their McMansion, leaving Madison and her father to rebuild their lives while Delilah faced federal prison time for her neighborhood crime spree. The criminal investigation recovered $47,000 in fraudulent fees stolen from vulnerable neighbors over 3 years. Mrs. Rodriguez got her $1,500 back from fake landscaping violations. Mrs. Olivia recovered $800 from manufactured garden consultations that never happened. Mr. Peterson could finally afford his delayed medical treatment once Delilah's systematic theft was exposed. Watching these elderly victims receive justice checks felt better than any personal vindication could have provided. Within a week, we dissolved Delilah's fraudulent HOA board and held new democratic elections with proper notice and transparent voting procedures. Mrs. Olivia became our new president with a mandate to protect homeowner rights rather than exploit them. Bob led the committee that rewrote our bylaws to prevent future predatory leadership, while Sarah used her City Hall connections to ensure proper oversight of community funds. The neighborhood transformed from a dictatorship into an actual democracy overnight. My pool became an inadvertent symbol of resistance to HOA abuse, featured in local news stories about property rights and community organizing. The video of Delilah's meltdown during the drainage went viral with over 2 million views, inspiring homeowners across the country to fight back against their own HOA tyrants. Property rights attorneys contacted me about using the footage in seminars about deed research and legal self-defense strategies. But the real victory was watching our community heal from years of systematic intimidation and financial exploitation. The summer block parties returned without fear of manufactured violations. Neighbors started talking to each other again instead of hiding from compliance inspections. Children played in yards without parents worrying about noise ordinance harassment. The smell of backyard barbecues replaced the diesel fumes of Delilah's generator-powered power grabs. Emma spent the rest of July with me as originally planned, finally able to have the pool party she'd dreamed of with friends who'd witnessed her dad's epic takedown of the neighborhood villain. Watching her laugh and splash in the pool I'd built with love while her classmates called me a legend made every moment of Delilah's harassment worth enduring. My daughter was proud of her dad again, and that meant more than any viral video fame. The pharmaceutical investigation revealed the full scope of the fraud scheme that had driven Delilah's desperation. Her husband's company faced $80 million in fines for price-fixing medications needed by elderly patients. the same demographic Delilah had been targeting for financial exploitation in our neighborhood. The poetic justice was perfect. She'd been stealing from vulnerable seniors to fund legal defense for crimes against vulnerable seniors. 6 months later, I used my settlement money to establish the Marcus Olivia Community Defense Fund, providing free legal assistance to homeowners fighting predatory HOA practices nationwide. We've helped families in 12 states recover stolen money and remove corrupt board members who thought community service meant personal enrichment. The fund operates from my pool house because there's something beautifully ironic about using the space Delilah tried to steal to protect other people from similar theft. The neighborhood thrived under actual community leadership instead of pharmaceutical-funded tyranny. Property values increased when buyers realized they were purchasing homes in a democracy rather than a dictatorship. New families moving in often mentioned the pool justice story as inspiration for choosing our community over developments controlled by predatory HOAs. Last month, Madison visited to apologize for her mother's crimes and thank me for stopping the schemes before her college fund disappeared into legal defense costs. She's thriving in her new school and working part-time to help her father rebuild their finances honestly. Sometimes the best revenge is giving people the chance to become better than their worst family members. The taste of justice never gets old, but the satisfaction of community protection lasts forever. Delilah taught our neighborhood that democracy requires eternal vigilance, but she also proved that ordinary people with electrical skills and legal knowledge can defeat even the most elaborate criminal conspiracies. So share your own HOA nightmare stories in the comments. I guarantee you're not alone in dealing with petty tyrants who mistake community service for personal profit. And subscribe for more stories about ordinary people fighting back against extraordinary corruption. Justice tastes better when it's shared.